In its almost 300-year history, our fraternity has attracted an impressive roster of men: statesmen, scientists, explorers, men of letters, artists. 9 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, as were 13 of the signers of the Constitution. 16 of our presidents, including George Washington, FDR, and Harry Truman, were Freemasons. Over the centuries, the words and actions of many of our brothers have attracted great public attention. That notoriety has often brought controversy with it, and that controversy has often encompassed Freemasonry. The first recorded attack on Freemasonry occurred in 1698, almost 20 years before the establishment of England's first Grand Lodge. The tabloids of the day soon began to exploit the public's curiosity about the fraternity, especially its rituals of initiation. All sorts of exposés competed for the consumer's penny. In the early years of the United States, the attacks quickly became political. The anti-Masonic Party appeared in the late 1820s. It was the first successful third party in U.S. politics, and it was devoted to the total annihilation of Freemasonry. By the 1850s, the anti-Masonic Party had all but disappeared, but the attacks continued, including those with a religious slant.
You have enormous numbers of religious leaders, ministers, priests, leaders of religions joining the fraternity, joining in and seeing it as important. But there are groups of people who see Masonry as religiously suspect. They're fearful about its religious implications, about what it's going to do for religion. And I think that's partly because these are people who see the church as central. And not only central, but in a way as holding a monopoly over people's religious lives.
Dictators have always feared our brotherhood. In 1942, Hitler outlawed Freemasonry in a decree relating to the Jews, Freemasons, and the ideological enemies of National Socialism. Mussolini, Stalin, and Franco followed suit. In more recent times, some of the most bitter attacks against Freemasonry have come from self-appointed defenders of the faith. Even popular television shows have taken potshots at the Masons, some humorous, some corrosive. When you sift through the attacks on Freemasonry, you find that most of them fail to take into account 3 fundamental realities. First, Freemasonry is not a religion or cult. Second, it does not teach universalism or salvation by good works. And third, it is not a secret society. Let's begin by examining the misconceptions about religion and Freemasonry. One of the major qualifications for membership in our fraternity is a belief in the existence of a supreme being. No atheist can become a member of our fraternity. We open and close our lodge meetings with prayers. In the lodge room, the Masonic symbols of the square and compass rest upon the open Holy Bible or other sacred books of faith. Obviously, there are connections between religion and Freemasonry. What are they? We asked 4 Masons with special interest and expertise in issues dealing with Freemasonry and religion to address that question. The topics we asked them to discuss are relevant to current religious opposition to Freemasonry.
You know, we all know to be a Mason you have to believe in a supreme being. You know, Reverend or Rabbi, can either one of you tell us, because of believing in a supreme being, does it mean we necessarily have our own religion in Masonry?
Quite the opposite, Judge McCaffrey. Freemasonry is not a religion. It does not promote any religion. But to be a Mason, you must believe in a supreme being, as you said. However, every man is free to worship as he chooses.
Everybody has their own opinion, but a true Mason is one who believes in a supreme being and worships in his own synagogue or church of his choice.
It's important to remember, too, that what Freemasonry requires of a religious nature is simply a belief in God, which is an underpinning if you're going to have a value-based organization, if you're going to believe in ethics and morality and strong educational materials. then you have to have an underpinning to build it on. We believe in God.
We force no one to a certain religious mode or belief. We are a fraternity with moral and ethical values, but we are not a religion.
Reverend Hartman, is there anything within Freemasonry that would give any discomfort whatsoever to a Christian?
I have heard the argument made by some that when they come to lodge meeting, they do not see Jesus Christ. But I think that's a false way of judging a lodge activity or being in a Masonic lodge. I don't go to lodge to meet Jesus Christ. As a Christian, Christ is within me, Christ is within the Christian fellowship. So I may be sitting next to other Christians and we share the Christian faith. But I also sit next to my good brother, Rabbi Frank, who is Jewish. We pledge our support and faith to the Supreme Architect of the universe. He defines that in his way, I define that in my way. We don't argue about that, we don't beat each other up over it, because we are there as brothers.
Getting back to you, Rabbi Frank, is there anything within Freemasonry that would make you feel, one as a rabbi or two as a Jew, uncomfortable in any way?
Absolutely not. There's everything that I would want to be as part of Judaism and Christianity is in Freemasonry. There's nothing that I would be embarrassed by, nothing that I would be insulted by, nothing that I would feel ashamed of being part of Freemasonry.
It's important to point out, too, that Freemasonry is not a study in comparative religion.
Right.
We respect each other's beliefs as human beings, as individuals. You're Jewish, you're a Christian minister. I'm a lay person in the Christian faith, but in Freemasonry we come together as brothers. We can worship together in the sense of how we choose to worship, but when we pray as individuals, and our religious beliefs are totally up to us.
In fact, religion is not discussed in a Masonic lodge. That's a forbidden subject because of the divisive nature it can cause. Exactly. We're not there as a religious body, we're there as a brotherhood.
Well, this question, I think, would maybe go better to Brother Fletcher. And this is something I find very interesting, and it's been up a lot on TV lately. I'm sure if you see the Learning Channel or some of the other cable network TVs, there's been some shows going on about Freemasonry and the history of Freemasonry. What do you think of these groups out there that consider Freemasonry a cult?
If you're going to define a cult, as I feel it should properly be defined, and particularly a religious cult, you usually find the charismatic leader who is the one who calls the shots, who tells the people what they're going to believe, and if you're going to stay part of that organization, that's what you're going to believe. There's one opinion, the leader's opinion, and that just simply isn't true in Freemasonry.
The most important thing and the difference between a cult and what Freemasonry represents is that a cult forces its believers, its members, or what have you, to separate themselves, to cut themselves off completely from their family. Freemasonry teaches family life and love and consideration. It doesn't tell you to leave your wife, to leave your children, forget about your job, forget about your city. It tells you to incorporate all of these things. Cults wouldn't.
Do you see, Reverend, any problem with the Masonic funeral service to the members of your religious background?
No, as a matter of fact, Judge, I have seen that enhance for the family members that are present, the fact that a group of men that their father or uncle or grandfather associated with thought enough of him to be there to, in a sense, perform their last rites for him out of honor and respect.
Which he was
yes.
held.
And as a Christian pastor, I can certainly build on that in my service that would say follow that by pointing out how, as Freemasons, we love one another in obedience to the will of God. And so this is exactly what, as a Christian pastor, I would preach.
And it shows the family the high esteem in which the brother was held, and it's the last opportunity for the lodge to say goodbye to a brother.
Yes.
But not only that, these are individuals who have full-time jobs, who have families to support, and yet they take time out from their busy lives and they come to the funeral to conduct a service, which may take only 5 minutes, but it takes 2 or 3 hours out of their day.
That's right.
Now, Rabbi and Reverend, in your religious capacities, one of the things that a lot of folks question Freemasonry about is the use of the term the great architect of the universe.
I can honestly tell you, that in the prayer book, Jewish prayer books, on occasion, there are references to the great architect, but not so much in the sense of the way we speak about it in Freemasonry. I have to say that I'm always moved and very much impressed when a lodge is open. And when I can't be there when the lodge is open, and I come in afterwards and give the proper signs and so forth to get in, that I feel like I've missed something very, very important in my Masonic life. So I look forward to it. I think it's a beautiful ceremony, referring to God in every sense of the word, and it doesn't bother me at all.
I think perhaps the reference as the supreme architect of the universe probably again comes from the creation story in the book of Genesis, where God created the heavens and the earth. So we look upon God as the architect of all life.
One of the things that critics also point to is that in Freemasonry they feel that good deeds, good works lead to salvation.
Unfortunately, the word salvation does have religious connotations with a lot of people. And again, I would say Freemasonry is not a religion. Freemasonry does not save souls. Freemasonry is a brotherhood. We believe the God who made us for immortality, fellowship with God. Religiously, how we go that route is our own conscience. However, this salvation of souls by good works has been a religious doctrine and has been used as a criticism against Freemasonry. Freemasonry does not in any way, shape, or form promote salvation of souls through good works.
Good works are the obligation every human being has to his family, to his community, to his country. And Freemasonry is just an avenue by which good works can be performed. If you talk to a Shriner who has just taken a child to one of the Shrine hospitals, he doesn't feel his good work has been in the sense that he's going to be rewarded by going to heaven because he did this. He does it because he feels good about doing it as part of his obligation as a human being.
Some of the critics look to a lot of the Masonic or Freemasonry rituals, and they say they're really anti-Christian, and maybe, Reverend, you could help us with this. They say it's anti-Christian in the sense that we refer a lot to King Solomon's temple, the whole temple concept. Do you feel in any way that that is against the Christian rituals? Do you see that? Do you hear that?
No, we don't focus on King Solomon's temple as the focal point of our ritual and our belief as Freemasons. It's only a symbol of how we are to build our lives, the care we are to make in building our lives, and that unlike King Solomon's temple, which was destroyed, we are building, as St. Paul says, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. We are building for eternity. Our lives are part of a spiritual temple.
Freemasonry values the role of religion in the lives of its members, but it has never tried to dictate any religious beliefs. This doesn't mean that Freemasonry teaches universalism. In fact, it makes no claims about the relative merits of one religion over another. Instead, we encourage our members to express and practice their individual religious beliefs through tolerance, compassion, generosity, and integrity.
I have ever let others enjoy their religious sentiments. All sects here, and we have a great many, have experienced my goodwill in assisting them with the building of their places of worship, and as I have never opposed any of the doctrines, I hope to go out of the world in peace with them.
Like all fraternities, we do have passwords, signs of recognition, and rituals of initiation. And since the late 17th century, thousands of exposés of our rituals have been published. Many of them are no doubt available at your public library. That doesn't make our secrets very secret, does it? And it certainly does not make us a secret society. In fact, we want the world to know who we are and what we stand for. Our Declaration of Principles encourages us to proclaim the Masonic principles as widely as men will hear. And while we have been reluctant to boast, we are proud of the work we do in our communities, and we enjoy the public recognition we get for our charitable work. We meet in very public buildings, some of them architectural landmarks. We wear our Masonic identity proudly. So the whole idea of Freemasonry being a secret society is another blatant misconception.
Before I became a Mason, I myself investigated their so-called secret rituals. I found out that their greatest secret is that they really have no secrets at all.
In fact, if anything, the modern Freemasonry is much more open than it ever has been before. So this charge of being a secret society, this charge of secrecy, and that secrecy means there's something suspicious, these are really very much unfounded, totally unfounded, in fact.
There was a time, several times actually, when Freemasonry did operate in secrecy, or at least partial secrecy. For example, let's assume that Freemasonry originated with the stonemasons' guilds in the Middle Ages. The medieval stonemasons did keep many of their construction techniques secret. In other words, their guilds were closed shops. Only those who knew the secrets of the craft could be members. It was a way to maintain quality control over skilled craftsmen. Or assume that Freemasonry began with the Knights Templar who fought in the Crusades. After years of hardship and violence in the Holy Land, some of them returned to England and Scotland only to be persecuted, tortured, and killed by powerful authorities in their homelands. For these veterans of the Holy Wars, secrecy became very much a matter of life or death. Today, in most parts of the world, Freemasonry no longer has to hide from repression. There is, however, one practical aspect to the modes of recognition. Because Freemasonry is international, the signs and other modes of recognition are one way for brothers to recognize and validate each other across any linguistic or social barriers. It's also important to make a distinction between secrecy and confidentiality. While we really do not practice secrecy, we do practice confidentiality. We meet privately, just as any board of a corporation does. Confidentiality is essential to protecting the rights and dignity of members and others to whom we give support and charity. I mentioned earlier that our Declaration of Principles asks us to proclaim our principles as widely as men will hear. We've been doing that in every medium, in videos made by both Masons and non-Masons, in books, newsletters, and magazines, and on the Pennsylvania Grand Lodge website. You'll find useful information on almost every aspect of Pennsylvania Freemasonry and links to dozens of other Masonic websites. All of these are great resources for more information about Freemasonry. But for both breadth and depth of information, one of the finest resources is the Grand Lodge's Library and Museum. The Masonic Library and Museum of Pennsylvania are located in the Masonic Temple in Philadelphia and are open to Masons and non-Masons alike. The library, established in 1871, contains over 70,000 volumes with additional holdings available in 6 satellite libraries. Whatever the topic, if it's related to Freemasonry, you'll find what you're looking for here. Explanations of Masonry for the general public, information on Masonic charities, the history of the craft, handbooks and guides for new Masons and lodge officers, biographies of famous Masons, and many discussions of the principles of Freemasonry, including the topics of religion and secrecy. The museum is one of the finest of its kind in the world, with both permanent and changing exhibits that give a visitor thousands of perspectives on Freemasonry. The Masonic apron that Madame Lafayette hand-embroidered for Brother George Washington, a smaller apron for Brother Tom Thumb, an exhibit dedicated to Brother Benjamin Franklin, another on the 16 U.S. presidents who were Freemasons, one of the earliest books printed in 1489, and thousands of other items that can spark the visitor's imagination about the history and principles of Freemasonry.
Yes, you can come in and take a tour that will take you 45 to 50 minutes. But that only is the tip of the iceberg, because each time as you come back, as you visit the library, as you visit the museum, as you go through the lodge halls, you're going to see something that you missed the first trip. And we're eager to have you come. We're eager to have you ask questions. We're eager to have you be a part of what I feel is a really major responsibility of Freemasons, and that is to educate not only the brethren, but the general public as well.
Despite all the accurate and accessible information about Freemasonry, misconceptions still persist. After all, Masons continue to take leading roles in their lodges, communities, as well as in the national and international arena. And of course, true leaders are bound to attract envy and criticism, at times even controversy. So ultimately, what is the best way to evaluate our fraternity? Its truest measure will always be the individual conduct and contributions of our members.